This is Andy Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Dan Rafael over Zoom. Dan, as always, it's a pleasure to see you. How are you doing? How are things going?
Things are good. Appreciate you having me on as always.
No, Dan, I appreciate you jumping on. And I thought, obviously, after the whole Haney-Lopez debacle yesterday, the best man to come to would be yourself, given obviously your reporting of it all. Just take me through the last, say, 24 to 48 hours and how everything's unfolded and your understanding of the entire Haney-Lopez fallout.
Well, to give you the end first, I guess, is the fallout, at least at this moment in time, is there is no fight. This is not happening. I talked to different people that have been involved. One person who I talked to about it that's been very involved in the whole situation basically was like, I'm trying to remember the exact quote. I posted the exact quote on my social media. But basically, it's like at this point, I don't think it's repairable. I have no idea what Teofimo Lopez is thinking. So if you go back to when the fight was originally being put together, they had all agreed to terms. That's how it was explained to me by multiple people involved in this fight. They were going to do this fight on August 16th in Riyadh. It was going to be a 145-pound contract weight. The reason for that and the way that that happened is because, again, this was after that original report that I went and I talked to different people involved in the whole scenario. But basically, it was that Devin Haney wanted to fight the fight at 147 pounds. He had fought his most recent fight on the Times Square card at 144 against Jose Ramirez. This was sort of like that was a way to sort of incrementally move up, but he's looking to be a welterweight and look to win a title in that weight class. Teofimo is still the 140-pound champion. He didn't want to go all the way up to 147 just yet, at least not for Haney. My understanding is he was more than willing and happy and able to do 147 if he could get the fight that he really wanted, which was against the unified champion, Boots Ennis. But put that aside, in the end, he wanted 140 for the Haney fight. Haney wasn't going to drop down that low. Haney wanted 147. And eventually, they came to an agreement they would do the fight at 145 pounds. Totally normal. It wasn't a title fight. People make a big deal about catch weights. I think this is the first time that Haney would ever have had a catch weight fight in his career, other than the 144, but that didn't benefit him or Ramirez, right? Because they're both moving up. Teofimo's not a guy that's been fighting catch weight fights, fought as lightweight champion, fought as a junior welterweight champion. Anyway, fight was agreed to.
Yeah, Dan, just pick that one back up there. It's just just a slight technical issue, so just take it away.
So the bottom line was the fight was agreed to. That's the main thing. And they were getting ready to do this fight. Teofimo wanted the NS fight, but Turkey wanted to do that fight also. And he, at the end of the day, it was Boots Ennis that I'm told that decided he didn't want to do that fight for whatever his reasons are. I'm led to believe he's got some other bigger, not necessarily bigger opportunity, but some other opportunity perhaps at junior middleweight. But regardless, he wasn't going to do the Teofimo fight at 147 pounds. And so at that point, even though Teofimo had agreed apparently to do the fight with Devin Haney, date was all done, money was done, catch weight was done, the whole nine, everything was squared away. He was still upset and was apparently blaming Turki Al-Sheikh that he was not able to deliver the Ennis fight. Now, Turki Al-Sheikh's got a lot of power in boxing, obviously, but he can't make somebody fight somebody. That's just not realistic. So Teofimo lashed out by posting some things on social media that were insulting to Turki Al-Sheikh. And I mean, if you're getting paid, career money, I'm not sure why you would go and bite the hand that feeds you and insult this person that's willing to spend his resources and his time helping build your career when he could do that with any fighter on the planet. And he picked you. And then you go out and you insult the guy. So that was obviously a bad situation. Turkey was not happy with that. And at that point, his team, his staff, they notified both the Haney camp and the Lopez fight, or Lopez camp, that this fight was not happening. Don't bother signing the contracts. Listen, they already had the paperwork. They already had the agreements in hand that were all agreed to. Don't sign them because we're not doing this fight. And so that became damage control. And there was a few days needed to sort of smooth things over. What can we do to repair the fight? And it became obvious that there was not going to be a fight in any way, shape, or form, at the very least, unless there was an apology from Teofimo Lopez, who I guess, if you know Teofimo, is not, always with the program. Like he likes to do his own thing. But eventually, I guess, I don't know if it was his father or his mother or, his promoters or his management or his, his buddies or whoever, he eventually posted what it seemed like a full-throated apology to Turkey about that, and it seemed like, okay, that did the trick. And as I was told, They were now willing to move forward with the fight under the same terms. They still had the paperwork. Sign, go ahead. The Turkey office sent notifications, emails to both teams. I believe it was on Sunday night. All right, go ahead now and sign the contracts. We're good. And Haney was really ready, willing, and able to do that. Wanted this fight. Lopez did not do that. And one thing leads to another. And I don't know why Teofimo did this, but eventually, much to the distress of all the people around him that wanted this fight to get done. Turkey wanted the fight to get done. Haney wanted the fight to get done. Teofimo wouldn't sign the contract and blew up the fight. I mean, I don't know what the exact reason for that was, but he's not fighting the fight. And he spent all this time wasting everybody's time and energy, agreed to things, had it fall apart, made the apology. They got it back together, still wouldn't sign off on it. So now he moves on to somewhere else, who knows where, and we'll see what the next step is for Devin Haney.
I mean, we all know Teofimo can be quite volatile at the best of times, and his mood can certainly swing from one to the next. I imagine it's something you're trying to find out as much as what everybody else was. But if you could maybe pin it down to as to why you feel like Teofimo has now taken that back step and decided not to sign the deal and not go ahead with a fight, what would you personally put it down to, Dan?
I wish I had an answer for that, because to my understanding, it's not as though there's some alternative fight out there waiting for him. Sometimes when fighters pass on certain fights, they have something also that they can go with. I'll give you one just recent example. You remember this was a couple of months ago. You had Canelo Alvarez, on the verge of making a deal with Jake Paul to do a fight with him, but in the back pocket, he had the big 4-fight offer from Turkey Al-Sheikh, and in the end, even though they had sort of agreed to the Canelo fight, it wasn't signed or anything like that. But he ended up not doing that deal and took the deal from Turkey Al-Sheikh to do what he's involved with now, which was the William Skull fight coming up, Crawford, and 2 more fights after that. Teofimo Lopez, to my knowledge, does not have anything like that on the table. It's not like he can just walk away from this deal and go sign some other big agreement with some other entity or promoter or platformer or whatever opponent to do a big fight. Those were his biggest fights. And he was being paid, if he had done the fight, he's going to make career money for those bouts. So I don't know what he does from here. I mean, he's still the junior welterweight world champion, still a hell of a fighter, but has to come to grips and figure out why he screwed up this fight. It's one thing if he didn't want to do the fight. I mean, that's fine. Guys don't want to do fights all the time. But to drag everybody through the whole process, agreed to the fight twice after the first time it was taken away from you, and then still blow it off, you're not reliable. And, no one, I don't think anybody would get mad if you just said, I'm not going to do the fight. Okay, well, you move on and you figure something else out. Like, I don't think anybody's going to sit here and pound on Boots Ennis because he decided that he wasn't doing a Teofimo Lopez fight. Okay, that's fine. Go and let's hear what you're going to do next. No one's going to pile on with that. But when you do what Teofimo did and you do it so publicly, you're going to have to, take the consequences.
Dan, would you currently say, given how it's all gone, especially with Teofimo's initial rant, despite the apology and the fact that he has dragged it out, like you say, would you say that the relationship with those out in Saudi Arabia is very much kind of done and dusted, or do you feel like it is repairable and at some point the fight might be able to be revisited?
I mean, I guess you never say never. I don't know. I mean, the particulars as it stands at this moment, I do know that they did accept his apology and they did repair the fight. Whether they're going to do it a second time, I think that's a heavy lift. It's not like Teofimo Lopez is the only game in town. There's a lot of terrific fighters that you can put in those positions and make significant or attractive fights for the public. And let's just be honest, the fight between Teofimo and Haney, from a style perspective, they're both huge talents. They're both really good. They're both championship level fighters. Teofimo is the champion at 140. I don't know if anybody was banging the door down saying this is going to be an all-time great fight. I mean, so I think the public at large, I mean, yeah, the drama of what happened is sort of interesting, but in the end, it's about the fight. And while I would be happy to see the fight, I don't know if it's like something I was like, oh, I must see that, or I can't, fathom what else I might do about my boxing fix. So life will go on, and we'll move on to bigger and better fights. And, I'm sure Devin Haney, who did everything right in this situation, he, negotiated him and his team on a fair basis, an honorable basis. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at what his father, Bill Haney, posted, was part of the note that they received from the folks at Sella, which is, Turkey's team that do the logistics and all the behind the scenes stuff. basically said, we appreciate the way you handled all this in an honorable fashion, and acted like professionals. And we're sorry to say Teofimo was withdrawn from the fight, so they're not going to be penalized. I'm sure Turkey will look to do the next Devin Haney fight, and we'll see what happens with Teofimo Lopez, who's burned bridges now with a lot of different people.
You obviously mentioned earlier on it was planned for August 16th. Are they going to still look to pursue a date for that time and look to do a Devin Haney fight in some way, shape, or form, or is it back to square one, back to the drawing board?
Yeah, that I don't have an answer for. I mean, they don't necessarily include me on their Zoom calls to tell me what their schedules are. So I don't know if they're going to do that. I would actually hope that they don't do something on August 16th, because had this fight with Haney and Teofimo gone through on that date, it would have unfortunately conflicted with the fight that is also being planned for in the United States as another pay-per-view, which is the rematch between Tank Davis and Lamont Roach, which was a fight that was already sort of planned for that date before the idea of Haney versus Lopez materialized. So I'm not sure what the magic of August 16th was for the Saudis, but from the boxing fan perspective, it's never a good thing to have two attractive fights on the same day, much less both on pay-per-view. So if August 16th as a date comes and goes, I'm okay with that, because Lamont Roach in a rematch against Tank Davis is a pretty big deal anyway.
Most people would agree with you on that one, Dan. Not wanting to see two big fights clash on the same date. I'll say this: we've got July 19th, we've got all sorts of boxing
Oh
on
my God.
that day. But yeah, just instead of talking about show clashes, Ryan Garcia, obviously, we know that he suffered that upset defeat to Rolly Romero on that Times Square card. But was there any chance that maybe he was back in the running for a Haney fight, or is there a reluctance until Ryan gets a good solid win under his belt to try and revisit Garcia Haney too?
Well, I know the last time I had any interaction with Turkey about that particular situation, he was still sort of mulling over whether he even wanted to go forward with the rematch immediately. Then after that back and forth I had with him, that's when Ryan ended up having to have surgery on the injured hand that he's recovering from. He actually, I think I just saw a photo that he put on his Instagram where you can see like the stitches and the whole thing. So he's out for a while. He's I mean, the time frame for his return to being able to train again was around 8 weeks. But even still, you never know how it's going to heal and how you're going to feel. And I think the fact that he's coming off a loss combined with the surgery, that anybody that's working with him in his career, you're going to want to get him something beforehand before you go into that kind of fight. His advisor, Guadalupe Valencia, had said to me, the main thing right now is to, not worry about a rematch with Ryan Garcia and against Devin Haney, but worry more about Ryan, the health of his hand, and where he is in terms of mentally and just getting himself in the right condition to fight. They're not worried about that. And then if you listen to what Oscar De La Hoya has had to say, who is Ryan Garcia's promoter, he's been out there doing interviews, during his fight weeks for other events. He doesn't want to pursue that rematch, so they have no interest. So if the advisor and the promoter are aligned, there's a pretty good bet that they're not going to go suddenly press Ryan Garcia into action, who wouldn't be ready for a fight in August anyway. So I think that the fight between Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney rematch, eventually it's going to happen. I mean, it's too big of a deal. There's been too much controversy for it not to happen eventually. And these are not guys who are old fighters, still in their 20s. But there's no rush. It's not like it has to happen next. There's definitely time for that. I believe it will happen, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon. So they'll look for something else for Devin Haney.
Just a few then to reel off away from Devin. We mentioned Tank-Roach too. When do you expect to see that official announcement come out, Dan?
Well, I knew it wasn't going to be right now, because there was no way that PBC was going to go through the process of their announcement and their press conference for the previous event for them, which will be the pay-per-view in July between Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios. So I would expect that we probably won't see that announcement until we get closer to the Pacquiao and, until it gets deeper into the promotion for Pacquiao against Barrios, because they don't want to kind of step on each other's, on their own promotions. So it'll be figure, usually those types of things figure about 8 weeks beforehand, thereabouts. So count back on the calendar, you can figure that out.
Canelo-Crawford, the location. Obviously, we've seen Canelo's more recent comments about seeing it take place in Vegas. It's where he wants it. So, do you have any idea as to what venue they're closing in on?
I'm not sure about the venue, but both Crawford and Canelo have said Vegas, and they're the two combatants in the fight. That's where the fight should be. I think that's where the fight was always meant to be. That's where Turkey wanted it to be in the first place. There are venues in Vegas. I'm sure they will figure something out. But to me, the thought that that fight would not be in Las Vegas to me is, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, there's a lot of people that do things that don't make sense in boxing. I learned a long time ago, when you sit and you analyze situations and you wonder why people are doing what they're doing. One thing I learned is sometimes people in this business just do stupid shit. And I'm not suggesting that the people involved with this fight are going to do stupid shit, because I do believe when it all comes down to it, they're going to do this fight in Las Vegas.
Dan, a shock defeat for Caleb Plant this past weekend.
Yeah.
What did you make of that? And I imagine that certainly put the Charlo fight right to the back of everybody's minds.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wouldn't necessarily mind seeing the fight, but I think it's a very hard sell for PBC or any entity to take a fight where they position it where we're putting our two guys in these fights. They're obviously the favorites, but these are good matchups, and we'll see what happens. And if they take care of their business, we're going to match them together. So I don't know how you have that happen, and then one guy lose, and now you're going to still go ahead and make the fight. It'd be one thing if it was not a pay-per-view, if you're just putting it on Prime and anybody could tune in. But coming off that type of loss, and now you're still going to go and charge $80, that's a little bit of a hard sell in my mind. And look, that's just the name of the game. It's prize fighting, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. So if they have to move on to other things, I certainly wish Caleb Plant the best. He acted it with class in defeat. I don't think he's what he was when he was at his absolute best, but I also don't believe what I've heard from some people that he's a completely shot fighter. That is not the case. He won probably the first, 5 or 6 rounds of the fight thereabouts. It was even on the scorecards after, I believe, the 8th round. This was not like a non-competitive fight. Resendez was getting a lot of disrespect in the build-up to the fight. He was certainly a lot better of an opponent in his side of the two fights than Lamana was in the Charlo side of the fight. Now Charlo came back after a very long layoff and just beat Lamana up totally expected the way that he operated in that fight. But there will be other fights for Charlo to do. And you know what? If Plant can get back on the horse, get a solid win under his belt and look okay doing so, I don't see why they couldn't come back and make that fight down the road. But when you play with fire and make tune-up type fights, expecting to get to the big fight, most of the time that works out. But there's a lot of times in boxing where it doesn't. You don't have to go back that far. Besides what happened with Plant and Charlo, you can go back just the previous few weeks and you go take a look at what happened with Ryan Garcia and Haney. Ryan Garcia lost, and it messed up the prospect of their fight in the fall. So, I don't like the tune-up situations like that. I understood it in this case because Charlo hadn't fought for 18 months. And Caleb Plant should have and rightfully was a big favorite against Resendez, but that's why they fight the fights. Nobody told Resendez he was there to change his life, and he did.
And last one from me, Dan. Obviously, we saw the news of Jaime Munguia's adverse finding. I just want to get your thoughts on it all. Waiting on news of that B sample, but as most of us know, it's very, very likely that B sample will match up with the A sample, just the way that tends to go with boxing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Very disappointing. PEDs are rampant in the sport, unfortunately, and he got caught up in it apparently. And he can say whatever he wants. Talking about the possibility of it being some type of contamination. Highly unlikely in the case of what he tested positive for was having testosterone that was not from within his body. Obviously, it produces it naturally, but they can tell if it's introduced from an outside source. That is not typically contamination, from my understanding of the way that works. So he is totally entitled to have his B sample tested. He said he would have it tested. He had a few days to make that decision. But as you said, it is highly unlikely, and I know this from 25 years of experience of writing about drug testing. It is extremely, extremely rare to have a B sample come back with anything different than the A sample. Now, there have been times where athletes have made points about, chain of custody things, and maybe there was some exposure with the other sample and this and that. But generally speaking, it's going to be the same thing. And he's going to, most likely the end result is his result of that win that he had in his rematch with Bruno Sarase will be overturned to a no contest, and he will be suspended for a period of time. End of story. This is such a common thing now. It's like cookie cutter. I don't know. There's no surprises anymore. I remember when Ryan Garcia had his positive drug test, and I broke that story and I wrote all about it. And I said he's going to be suspended probably for a year. And I got all kinds of hate, and people said, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. What happened? He got suspended for a year. and he put up a protest. Oh, I'm not going to be suspended for it. Well, guess what? He sat for a year, and then he came back and he lost. And Jaime Munguia is going to probably sit for a year also, at least.
Dan, it's a pleasure to catch up with you as always. I leave you to get back to your job. Thank you for speaking to me. A pleasure as always. I'm hopeful I'll see you soon.
Appreciate that, Eddie. Thank you, sir.